Good morning and welcome everybody. Welcome to another Kerfuffle webinar. I am absolutely delighted, overjoyed, ecstatic to have my long-term friend and, well, actually, business enemy, although we weren't really ever enemies, were we? Trevor Ewins of MRI Software. How the devil are you, Trev?
I'm extremely well, not too bad at all. I don't think I've ever positioned myself as anyone's enemy, really. But
no, I thought, how to win friends and influence people. That was my little
the nemesis a few times, but
that's it. That was my little clickbait kind of thing to throw out there. Trev, obviously, loads of people know you. You've been around as like the bad penny, like my good self. You've been around for years. Do you want to just give us just a brief background about yourself, and obviously then just give an overview of what MRI is for those people that haven't come across the business before?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm 52 years old. Property and agency, to a large extent, has been in my blood really since I left school. I went into the mortgage market, actually. I went into work for a now defunct insurance company in High Wycombe called Equity & Law. The site for that's now been redeveloped into housing. And I very quickly left and went to work for a company that many people know called Rainbow Countrywide, who were the financial services arm of Countrywide at the time.
Okay.
Successful, mainly in and around Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire. Ended up leaving there and going to work for Chancellors, which was a great 10 years of my life. I had a lot of respect for James, God rest him, and really got a good foundation there. And never sold a house in my life, by the way. Never let a house. But 10 years in operations there, and then 10 years at Romans. And people will say to me, Romans was an interesting one, hit them at the time, and they were just going through a huge growth spurt.
Yeah.
And without doubt, some of the best friends I've ever made in property. Still, extremely good friends with a lot of people there. Right back from those days, and we had so much fun building that business up from what it was to what it's become.
Monster business, wasn't it?
Yeah, and again, it teaches you so much. But well, yeah, 15 years later, more or less, sort of fell into property, and there's a bit of a backstory to that, property technology, sorry. And ended up going to work for what was then called Spar Microsystems, Aspasia, and have gone through now 2 acquisitions. We were acquired by a company called Cube Global Software back in 2012, and then acquired again, which is probably the more documented acquisition by this American software house called MRI Software, who are arguably now the largest provider of residential and commercial software worldwide. Which we'll talk about it.
There's no argument on that, isn't it? It's a massive. I mean, one of the things that I'm a bit of a train spotter for this, but actually, when you get under the skin, as we're going to do over this, the size and scale of MRI is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that comes with its own challenges, to be honest. I mean, that we can't shy away from the fact that that's fine, but the market that we seek to service with our agency product suite has large corporate agents within it, but is largely dominated by much smaller organizations who are probably worth use to that little bit more personal touch kind of element. And that's the challenge we always face in terms of when we make acquisitions in this space, trying to retain as much as we can that contact with the people, because we're all people.
Of course.
This business is all about the people we dealt with, right?
Yeah, and you've been a big proponent of that over the years, haven't you? But I mean, just talking about that mergers and acquisition. So as you said, Cube kind of picked up the old Aspasia, as I used to know it there. But then you went on as well, got CML Software, often known as probably the foremost provider of letting software as well. Most people would say. And after that, was it what was it called? Housescape Universal, wasn't it? What one was the product? One of the company.
This sort of software, yeah. So yeah, Universal, yeah. I mean, 2 ends of the scale really there. You're dealing with an enterprise solution used by well-known large agency groups across the country in terms of CML radar.
Yeah.
And then what we now call Agency Central, which was Thesaurus Universal, which is kind of an out of the box. You can actually go on our website and buy it for £100 a month or whatever.
There's a lot of people that talk about our software, and I'll just talk about it as if it was the old days of a cloud-based SaaS model. But genuinely, actually, yeah, Thesaurus was one of the few that you could genuinely get started with, as you just highlighted, by signing up on the spot, couldn't you?
Yeah, and that's still the case. A couple of hours training. If you're an agent that kind of knows your beans, you're going to be able to pick it up and just use it, which is a big credit to the guys that kind of set that thing up, really.
It's hard. It's hard to do that.
It is, but it also means it constrains you slightly with that particular product, is you can't grow it too big, because if you turn it into the products that we go to market with, you can't then deploy it as a out of the box, pay us £100 a month and away you go. So you have to find that line, which is why we promote 2 products in the market. And we now have a successful migration story for a number of clients where they've been on that product, grown the business, got to a scale, and said, actually, we want to move across.
Yeah.
To
but what's good about that is it's not like some of the players that just scoop up these companies and there's seemingly no one steps on the toes of another product line. You've got a very clear definition of where the products sit, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, we try and keep the Thesaurus product down in terms of user numbers. It becomes less scalable. You've got more requirements as the businesses grow. They want to do things differently, and you probably talk about somewhere around 15 users or so. You get to a point that you need to flip across onto our go-to-market product, which is essentially a converged offering of all the really cool parts from Radar. Over the last 2 years have been built into what was Aspasia.
That Radar was the CML product, wasn't it?
That was the CML product, yeah, sorry. And they're great products, arguably in a lot of ways stronger when we first bought it than the old Aspasia products in some areas, especially around some of the reporting, dashboarding routines.
Right, wasn't it? Yeah.
And all we've done is steal our own code, really. It's a .NET solution. Yes, it's taken time, and the programmers are now sat there with their heads in their hands because it takes a while. But we've taken the best out of that and pushed it into the other product, and we continue to do that. There's some back office stuff that we're now really starting to drill into in CML that we feel we should build into our go-to-market offering, and that's what we're up to now, really.
Who's your ideal client, Trev? Is it literally? I mean, I know. Let's just forget the kind of the housegate entry one. You dealt with that kind of the long tail there. But for the main MRI offering, what is there a kind of perfect demographic? Is it mid-sized independents? Is it corporates? Is it the SME end? What does it look like?
I'm always going to say everything, aren't I? But if you're looking for an honest opinion about the kinds of organisations we're trying to engage with, I think it's very, very hard to move a huge organisation. You've only got to look at the Connells countrywide merger and look at the job that our friend Gary's got on his hands there now. Let's be open, that's a huge challenge for those guys to take forward and decide how they're going to scale up a joined organization, because ultimately they're going to need at least a single, maybe 2 platforms in that business to make it work properly. And being in that space, absolutely, that's what we are. We are a corporate real estate provider. That's our bread and butter in terms of, especially in the commercial and build to rent market. That's what we do, is large software solutions for huge organizations. So that market, yes. Whether you'll see many opportunities in that space, unlikely, because at the end of the day, a lot of these organizations, and some are already our clients, are very much entrenched with the products they're in. And something we'll talk about later, 80% happy, that we'll touch on that subject. So really, I think our appetite over the next few years has to be to try and really satisfy that medium-sized market, that core of the market. That kind of, was 2 branches over the course of the last successful sort of 10 years has become 20, and might be in a solution that, or a number of solutions that they've just carried on dealing with. Oh, look, it's okay, fine, we need to change it, but I also need to go and sell and let some houses, so let's crack on. They're the organizations we're really trying to appeal to say, look guys, first single solution in the market across sales and lettings, constantly growing, constantly evolving, committed to take that product to market and grow and improve it. Come and have a look. And that, that's a long answer to a short question.
No, it's a good one. And talk us through that element there, because obviously, yeah, Aspasia, I think it claimed to be the first cloud-based package, although our friends in Wales would probably throw a bit of fruit there. But I'll leave that to you guys to argue over. But what is absolutely true is that Aspasia was definitely known as the first combined package for sales with an incredibly strong lettings module behind it, wasn't it? And it created quite a strong client base on the basis of being able to offer that. And you've just built on that with MRI, haven't you?
Yeah, and I think the sales criticism has always been there for us. I think any client that embraced us for sales and lettings early on and has built their business with that in-house probably was driven by the letting side of their business. So anyone that put us in for sales, in the early days would have put us in because lettings said, we need this and you're going to take this on board. That the 90s were very much a period where different people made different decisions for different reasons. So the sales director invariably put in, the lettings director would have put us in or someone similar to us because we service that area better. And to some extent, we plowed those furrows, right? Refit, like us 5 years ago, probably took the decision that you've got to start looking the other side of the fence. We're probably less mature in that. We're probably a couple of years in actually looking at the sales side and saying, guys, you've got to make this better. And that's kind of what we've been up to really over the last 2 year period, besides converging the CML side, is looking at how a salesperson experiences our software and genuinely trying to work with clients to improve that and make the offering more sales focused. Sales, everyone always says, oh, it's really easy to write sales software. It really isn't. Because
is it? Yeah.
It really is not. There is so many. Lettings is complex because lettings processes are complex, and the odd landlord that wants you to collect 6 months rent up front, you've got to accommodate that, or you've got a landlord that lives in Dubai and the wife lives over here and they both own a house, and the tax implications. That's what's interesting in a lot of ways about the letting space. Sales is a lot more driven in terms of it's got to be easy. I haven't got time to even, I'd like to think about it and appear in my CRM. That's it, done. Because I'm busy.
And yet the CRMs famously are the source of truth, aren't they? They are the main driver for the contacts going into the business. So you need to make it easy to get often a lot of information in there, because otherwise you can't do all the really clever, sexy stuff like reporting, referrals. All of that falls down if the raw data isn't getting in there in the right format.
Yeah, and I think I would hope the clients that use us for both really see the benefits of that. I mean, I won't name them, but I remember 2015, there was a bit of a blip in the market, and one of our clients weren't particularly huge at the time, now grown and been acquired, but they basically had to lose a huge amount of staff, went from 45 to 15 staff across 5 branches almost overnight.
Right.
And what the CEO said to me, funny enough, when he sold the business, he never would compliment them while they were using it. But when he sold the business, he said, we could not have done that if we had been on 2 solutions. He said, we immediately trained all our sales staff to do lettings. Overnight, we could get everyone doing the same thing in the same way. They grew again really quickly. They went straight back up to double that number of staff almost within a year. And
so you'd have a better idea of this because you've been doing this part of it longer than me. But I almost used to steal a living on the consultancy side of things, going into an agent's business, and they'd say, look at our tech stack. What would you suggest? And for me, the easiest one in the world was if you had separate systems for sales and lettings. Don't bother thinking about anything else until you've got those ones over, because removing that technical Chinese wall between the systems and the combined databases for referrals is going to be one of the biggest wins you can ever get. I was going to say easily, because it's not that easy to do, but actually it can have the most dramatic effect, can't it?
Yeah, and arguably, and I'm bound to say this, it's a lot easier to move sales systems and letting systems as well.
Yeah.
So if you've got a letting system that does sales, that's the first way you should look at things, really. And I would admit that we've been poor at recognizing that's something we should focus on, really. So that's really a lot of our drive.
Cool. So look, we're going to dispel a few industry myths today, because we've been denied going down the boozer and having a pint together, where we would ordinarily have talked about this. But let's kick off a few, just in terms of, I would just throw out a few terms and then we take it, you take it off, as we would do, as I said at the bar. Let's just look at some of the industry perceptions that you hear. So you only have to go into an agent's Facebook group, you know, that all CRMs are rubbish. Discuss.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to my 80% comment, doesn't it? You know, we do suffer. We all suffer a little bit, that we're not as responsive as our clients would like. You know, it's just a button. I mean, we hear it all the time, don't we? You know, this has happened. It's just a button. Why can't you just add it and it'll work? I mean, I horrify our developers when I walk back in the room sometimes, because they know that's coming. And of course, it's, you know, what does that button do though? I struggle with this a bit, because sometimes you do have to look at it from the other side and say, what we've got to provide is an all-encompassing solution to an industry that is still pretty well fragmented. You know, we deliver our solutions to agents in the same town in a different way completely, because they want to use the system differently to the guy down the road, because that's their unique selling point, you know. And it's got to work for me that way, because that's how I work and he doesn't, and that's why I get a bit more market share in my mind, because the software works that way. So having something that is essentially, you know, able to deliver everything that every agent wants in what is quite a rapidly evolving market as well, and we'll talk about partners a bit, but you know, that kind of requirement to have everything that the agency market, the agency market sees in the market, all the shiny and all the cool stuff. I need all that now, but your software's out of date and it's old and it's, you know, it's archaic, and it's like, okay, but you know, we are the core source of information within your business, and certain elements of what you've done are far more important, or what you want done, so are far more important than the color of magenta that your homepage is, and yet sometimes that becomes the single biggest issue. That, you know, that's and we have had people, you know, basically have been with us a long time, who have, to my mind, moved on for all the wrong reasons. And I also think sometimes the agents that engage with us in a structured, understanding, measured way are the ones that we're the most successful with. So the ones that come to us and say, you will do this tomorrow, otherwise I'm going to go. Unfortunately, that happens, and you know. But the ones that come to us and say, look, I've got this idea, it'd be quite nice if we could discuss it. You know, that stuff like that invariably can end up in roadmap, because you think, yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And then we just perceive to be no, we just say no all the time. And when I look at what we have developed and what we are developing, I think all of that comes from stuff where agents have said it really needs to do it that way. You know, outside of compliance, that's what we rely on, is that kind of feedback from agents. And the short answer to your question is, I think they think we just don't listen. Whereas actually we do. We're probably terrible at communicating back that we are listening and this is what's coming. The amount of times I've been on upgrade calls or calls with agents where they've expressed dissatisfaction, and you show them stuff and they go, oh, I didn't realize that. And of course, the problem is we can only communicate it so many times. We'll send it out on update lists, we'll send videos out, we'll say, you know, this is cool stuff we've done. But really,
you know, but sending it via email these days as well, isn't it? You know, you're fighting against an inbox that is getting 200 emails a day, isn't it? So even though
and they want someone to come and sit in front of them and show them.
That's right.
I get that. The difficulty with that is, one, obviously the middle of what we're in now, but that's one area. But also having that kind of ability to have someone come and sit in front of you and show you is really hard to do. Because you need, you know, 1,000 people driving around the country showing people new software. So,
but you do have quite a hands-on relationship with your clients, though, don't you? In terms of, I mean, I know we're in the middle of lockdown and everything else now, but you know, you would ordinarily be seeing clients, wouldn't you?
Yeah, personally, you know, agency's my baby, and I don't make any secret of the fact that, you know, it's the one area that I probably concentrate on the most. Agency and build to rent are probably the two core residential areas that I'm closest to, and I really do try and keep as close as I possibly can to as many clients as I can. Unfortunately, with over, well, what are we now, probably over 1,000 agency clients, it's very hard to still engage with maybe the guy that you'd have had a beer with, you know, when we were 100 clients. But that's just the way it is. You know, I don't like the fact that I can't necessarily talk to all of them.
Well, it's the nature of a growing business, isn't it? It's not like Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs couldn't see everyone who bought an iPad, could he?
Yeah, I wouldn't put myself in that category, but yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, and sadly, you know, you're the same as me. You get to catch up with a lot of these people at trade shows and so on, and that's just not there at the moment, is it? But it'll come back. So, well, we've got a virus update, vaccination. Quick story. I don't know if I'm allowed sort of segues, but I haven't had my thing through yet to say, you know, come and get your vaccination. So I'm still waiting on that, but I'm only a couple of years away from it. And I made some inquiries because a friend of mine said you might get it for being clinically obese. And I'm like, oh, thanks, okay. So I looked into it.
Just love friends.
I love it. I just quickly, sorry, I know it's a segue. I did my BMI. Apparently, I'm not. I'm just obese, not clinically obese. So,
well, there you are. We're filming this on a Friday afternoon. There's what a way to end the week.
yeah. So I don't qualify yet. Probably in a couple of weeks.
I've never thought of you as morbid, anyway, my friend. You've always been cheerfully obese. Can you be cheerfully obese?
That's what I am. Yeah.
So, okay, yeah. Well, Christ, you could divert a conversation better than I can. Let's deal with that challenge you spoke about before, which is a very real issue, I find, especially with the large organisation, that, you know, there's 80% of the functionality there. Just talk us through what that kind of means to you in terms of a challenge, and I'll give my thought after.
Yeah, I mean, there's another story I spin out. You know, a guy I met about 10 years ago, finally, actually, we signed them up and they use our software now, and we have quite, you know, a good laugh about bits and pieces. And he said at the time when he signed with us, he looked at everybody and he said, Trev, you're all about the same. He said, you all do about 80% of what we need. He said, so you're all a bit shit. He said, but you just seem to be less shit than the others. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a compliment in my world, and you know, being marginally less bad than the others.
I used to genuinely, Chad, I don't know if this ever got fat. That was literally how I sold it. Look, we're the best of a bad bunch. It's not the greatest sell in the world, is it?
No, and you know, coming back to seriousness around it, I think it's really hard to be that kind of panacea to everybody.
There is, look, let's be honest as well. And so we all know that there's this huge elephant in the room in terms of the likes of Salesforce, this multi-billion pounds, you know, CRM product that on the face of it, when you look at the tick listing functionality, should make us all cower and run away. But you know, you've still got to use it. You've got to implement it. You've got to customize it, and all of these things stop you getting in the way. And if a system like Salesforce can't be that just Lord of the Rings geeky again, one system to rule them all package, then none can they?
I mean, I agree with you completely. We use Salesforce across the business. It's huge in our organisation.
Yeah.
I have no concept of what it must cost us to run Salesforce across the business, and it drives people mad.
Yes.
And yeah, it is our single source of truth, and it does work very well for the business, and you know, it's our core tool within the business. But I wouldn't even put it as 80% there. So you know, I'll take the 80% comment, but we are in a market that has a demand set that is moving. I alluded to it earlier. You know, that drive. Well, there's two things, and I'm not going to mention millennials because it's not really where we are, but our clients are not us. No. And that especially, you know, in that front office space, we are, and let's put it out there, we are probably not servicing their expectations of, you know, anyone up to 30. We're delivering software to that just sits there and goes, yeah, okay. Could be prettier, couldn't it? And you know, why is this this isn't logical? Why is this over here, and why is that embedded over there? And I get it. And when you look at some of the front of house partnering solutions that we're either partnered with or talking to, they absolutely make sense.
Yeah.
Because you know, it makes that experience so much easier. I'm on my mobile. You know, you can use our products on the mobile, that's fine. But I'm doing everything on that. It's all automated. You know, my appointments just happen, and, and the world's a great place. And you know, the criticism we get in that 20% is, well, why don't you just do that? Well, I'll tell you why we don't do some of it, because when we turn that kind of thing on, when we trial it, people don't like it, because, you know, classic example, auto appointments. So people say, oh, you should just make an appointment with diary. Yeah, good luck. We wrote all that kind of technology years ago.
And the users kicked back because they didn't like it happening.
It was causing all kinds of issues.
So anyway, Trev, thank you very much for giving us that overview. Look forward to catching up on the next one and learning a little bit more. But for today, have a good day.
Cheers, mate. Look after yourself.
Cheers.